We'll get to Luka a little later, but this week has been all about blockbuster trades. We got Luka going one way. We got the NFL getting in on the fun on Monday. Rams receiver Cooper Kupp has been informed that the team will be seeking a trade immediately. He announced that on social media yesterday. He had that record-breaking season in 21, led the league in receptions and yards and touchdowns, signed a 3-year extension worth a little over $80 million. He just completed the first season of that. If you saw him on social media, he wrote, "I don't agree with the decision and always believed it was going to begin and end in LA. Preparations start now for 2025. Highly motivated, as healthy as ever, and looking forward to playing elite football for years to come. Love you guys, but coming for it all." Okay, let's start with the particulars. Graziano, insider extraordinaire. What can you tell us about the mechanics and how this thing we should expect it to go?
Scheduled to make $20 million this year, of which $5 million is guaranteed. $7.5 million is paid as part of a roster bonus in March. So the Rams would want to do it before then, ideally make someone else pay that roster bonus. That's where it gets tricky, right? This is a guy who's on the wrong side of 30. He's had injury issues. He's already been supplanted, as the number one receiver on his own team. I think there was a sense that if he was on the Rams this year, it wasn't going to be for $20 million. So is there a team willing to pay him that? Or will the Rams have to pay some of that money in order to facilitate a deal? If no deal materializes, could the Rams end up cutting the guy that was Super Bowl MVP for them a couple of years ago? So a lot of different ways this could still shake out, but it certainly does not feel like Cooper Kupp will be a Ram in 2025.
So I want to ask my guys here, Lewis, I'll start with you. It sort of feels like a weird question. It feels like 15 minutes ago that we were debating whether or not he was the best receiver in the NFL. Yeah. Now, as Graziano mentions, he's definitively not the best receiver on his own team. Yeah. So how impactful, we're going to get a trade here. He's going to be on a new team. How impactful a player is Cooper Kupp right now?
He's still a 1B type of player. I said 1A in the meeting. I should have said 1B. That's kind of what I'm really talking about as far as a guy who can still control the middle of the field. He can. If you look at a lot of the highlights here that you're going to wind up seeing, the ball is caught either a yard or two outside the numbers to a yard or two inside the numbers like that. He can still control the seams because he's just smart as hell. He's a guy who's super instinctive, reading coverages, adjusting on the run. Obviously, he had great chemistry with Matthew Stafford. He's going to now have to start over from scratch with a new quarterback and develop those kinds of things. I understand exactly what Dan is saying, though. When you're talking about a guy who's going to be making over $20 million or counting $20 million over, against your cap, who's 31, who's had an ACL injury, had ankle surgery, hasn't played a full season now, a full 17 games or a full 16 games, I believe in like the past 3 years, teams are going to, they can quickly flip on you. Where you thought this guy is a lifer, all of a sudden they start looking at those things and they start trying to project 2-3 years down the road and they start looking at their salary cap situation. They're going, there's the target. That's the guy we got to move on from. Yeah. But he's still a 1B who can control the middle of the field, seal some of the edges in the run game, just like he did for LA. A team would be wise to really look into this if they need that profile.
The Houston Texans, the San Francisco 49ers, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Denver Broncos. If I were one of those four teams, I would be immediately calling. I agree with Lewis. I think he's still a really good player. He's not going to be 2021 Triple Crown winner, but very much so a high-end, at worst, number 2 wide receiver. If you're the Houston Texans, you just hired a guy from the LA Rams, Nick Caley, accurately, is their new offensive coordinator. So there's that immediate transition. You don't know what you're going to get with Stephon Diggs and his health and Tank Dell. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals, are you realistically going to be able to sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? They continue, at least Joe Burrow does, to say that they can. I think that's a long shot. San Francisco, what's Brandon Ayuk's health coming off of his injury? They only really have Pearsall and Jennings, 2 good players, but Cooper's immediately an upgrade. And then Denver, him and Sean Payton, it's the perfect scheme fit. If one of those 4 teams I call.
I don't think they're going to trade him to San Francisco.
Okay.
In the division.
Fair enough.
I feel pretty good about that.
I have a question.
I understand the point you're making there, but those are
it makes sense, right? But if the Rams have any control over where he goes, I doubt it's going to be.
But to your point, you said they may wind up having to release him.
But that may be some motivation to get a deal done, to have some control over where he goes. Good for him and his agent for getting that $5 million guarantee. That should help goose things.
You know what's so funny? This reminds me of a saying that I was told when I was a player, and a saying I remember someone reiterating to me when I got in the front office. Front office people's jobs is to replace you. If they can't replace you, then they've done their job. That's what happens to every single player. Puka Nakua's emergence has made Cooper Kupp one of the guys who you look at and you go, he was the hero of their Super Bowl run.
MVP.
Now all of a sudden he's expendable. Yeah. Think of how shocking that sounds to you.
He's become that player that every once in a while he'll make a catch and you'll say to yourself, "Oh yeah, right. He's still there." You know,
Don't forget the Rams are the team that was trying to get up last year to get Brock Bowers, if I'm accurate, is right. So they have been looking for that kind of secondary pass catching threat for a year or two now.
Okay, so that was the second big trade story that happened yesterday. The really big one, both literally and figuratively, is that guy, Cleveland, Myles Garrett. He posted a trade request on social media yesterday. He is the NFL's reigning Defensive Player of the Year. He finished the season second in sacks, sixth in pass rush win rate. He's had 14 sacks in each of the last 4 seasons. That's been done exactly 0 times before in NFL history. So yesterday he released a statement saying in part, "While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl." And Dan and Lewis, you guys did a game right at the end of the season with him, and you were talking about it on the air then, and you were talking about it this morning, that based upon your conversations with him, this didn't surprise you.
No, not at all. I mean, he was very clear of his disappointment with where they were and the questions that he had going forward for their organization. He had constantly talked about, well, what's going to be the plan at the offensive line? What's going to be the plan at running back? Obviously, what was going to be the plan at quarterback? That's the crux of this situation. The trade that they used to acquire and then pay for Deshaun Watson has really blown up a playoff caliber roster, and Myles Garrett's career is wasting away in Cleveland. I mean, there's 3 guys that have had over 100 sacks in their 20s, Reggie White, Jared Allen, and Myles Garrett. He doesn't turn 30 till the end of next season. So you're talking about a Hall of Fame career that is getting wasted away. God, this is huge news to me. Guys like this don't become, and I don't know how available he is, they don't become available. Could you imagine if Aaron Donald became available in the prime of his career, or J.J. Watt became available in the prime of his career? It speaks to the disappointment, because Andrew Berry, the general manager of Cleveland, really did build a pretty darn good roster. They just missed on the quarterback.
Yeah, and it's funny to say that he's available, because according to Andrew Berry, and I'm sure according to Jimmy and Dee Haslam, he ain't available. Right. He wants to be available, right, which is kind of what makes this all the more interesting. And look, when you sat and you looked in Myles Garrett's face, when he was talking to us about this, he was calm. He was very calculated. And we asked him, look, it's out there that you said at the end of the season you're going to want to sit down with management and the coaching staff. And Kevin Stefanski, we asked him too. And he said, look, Myles has earned that right. He's earned that right by what he has done on the football field. And Myles is someone who's very, very articulate about the history of the game, how he fits into the history of the game, how he still wants to make history on, as far as, leaving his legacy in this game, but most importantly, how he wants to win. And he wanted to know what's the plan for winning. And I'm telling you, that Deshaun Watson contract, it's not just about the ramifications of what it does to their salary cap and the fact that he's untradeable and he has it's $170-something million dead cap hit if you got rid of him, and he's not going to be available this year maybe anyway. That's amazing. Just think about the mental gymnastics that makes a player like Myles Garrett do. Look at what we did here, and now we have no way out of it.
No future.
We have no way.